I'm really super honored to be here back at Mount Hermon. It's been a while since I've been here, but it's been a while since a lot of people have been here. But I love being back. Love the Rombergers. Dear people, your family. This is a very special place, and you're a very special couple. So, I'm just super stoked to be back and to tag team with Danny Strange. That was what a great start this morning. Doctor Strange. By the way, the movie Doctor Strange was directed by a Biola grad. Scott Derrickson, so that makes Danny and me like brothers. So, and Luke Brown, that was great to be with them. You're gonna get some more stories from me, so I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time, covering much of my background. But I am married to my wife Paula. We have 3 20-something children who are right there, more or less there. Maybe they're there. There they are. Yeah. That was at our son's graduation just last month, and our daughter-in-law Ashley and our 3 kids. So our kids have never been to Mount Hermon, so they don't know what they're missing. But one of these days, I've been at Biola for 15 years now, and I'm originally from Boston. Speaking of, it's a very hard night for me tonight. No, I'd rather watch the game than listen to myself, frankly. And if there is a sudden outburst of excitement in the crowd, I'll know you're really liking what I'm saying, or Steph Curry, you got another 3, because you're multitasking. But I am doing my best to be in Warriors land, trying to figure out what it means to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So, good. Any Biola grads out there? Wow, God bless you. Any Biola parents? Former parents? Anybody ever heard of Biola? Yeah. I know we got the Rombergers. There's 2 of our outstanding alumni. Ron Rady, my old colleagues out there somewhere. Met Ellie last night. One of our recent grads as well. Thursday afternoon, if you're interested in Biola, you're a grad, you're a parent, former parent, want to know a little bit more, we're going to have a 4:15 in the Lakeside Lounge. A little bit of time to talk about Biola. It's going to be a happy hour. It's going to be happy because I'm there, and it's going to last about an hour. So come on Thursday afternoon, and we'll see you then. Many of you know that Biola started as the Bible Institute of Los Angeles. That's how we got our name, Biola. Lots changed since then. We're not in Los Angeles. About 55 years ago, we moved out to La Mirada, so there's no more L.A. in Biola, and we were an institute, then we became a Bible college and a college and a university, so the I is not true anymore either. We're not of Los Angeles, we're and near to Los Angeles. So the IOLA don't work so well anymore, but the B still does, and so that's really what I want to get to today. For reasons that I hope become obvious, we're going to spend the next 4 nights talking about the book of Ruth. And if I didn't do it, I would be ruthless, and I don't want to be that. So, it's a precious book. I can only skim the surface. I was talking to Luke Brown a little bit earlier, and he said that their church, Fellowship Bible Church in Brentwood, Tennessee, spent 26 weeks on the book of Ruth. There's only 4 chapters in the book of Ruth, so they got deep. We're kind of gonna drone over Ruth the best we can, and I hope you can come each night, because the story builds on each other. These aren't like episodes of The Office, like where they're kind of randomly, you can just watch one, watch the other, they don't flow together. It's more like, I was going to say Breaking Bad, but I'll say it's more like The Crown, okay? So they kind of flow together, they build off each other, so what happens tonight is going to be important to understand tomorrow, and the next night, and the next night. So we're going to get right into it. I'm actually, just to give you the full context, I'm going to read the first chapter of the book of Ruth. So join me if you will. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, I'm going to read it fast because there's a lot there, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. And they were from Bethlehem. And they went to Moab and lived there. Now Naomi's husband died, And she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one Orpah, the other Ruth. And after they had lived there about 10 years, both sons also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We'll go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. And even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." At this, they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," Naomi said, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." And when Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the 2 women went out until they came to Bethlehem. And when they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. So this is God's word, and we're going to get into it. First verse there. In the days when the judges ruled, there was famine in the land. Honestly, what was happening then when the days the judges were ruling wasn't that great. If you actually go back 1 verse to the last verse of the book of Judges, you'll see that it says that in those days, Israel had no king, and everyone did as he saw fit. So those are the last words that we get, to give you a little context, before we get to the book of Ruth. And I see a lot of this today, maybe you do too. People doing what's right in their own eyes, on sexuality, on race, on the use of money, positions of power, social media comments. And in this context, the days that judges rule, we find the book of Ruth. And the book of Ruth is caught between 2 books. It's between the book of Judges and Samuel, and then Samuel leads to Kings. So on the one hand, you have all of the judges and the most important political leaders of the land that fill the book. It's like the evening news. The main stories of the nation are happening on those pages. And then you have the other book, which is Samuel and Kings, which introduces you to the kings. Again, the main people in the land, the kings of Israel. And between these 2 sets of books, it's almost like SCOTUS and POTUS, right? The Supreme Court, the judges, and then the leaders, the presidents, they're there. You find this little book. And you find one of the loveliest stories about a handful of ordinary people like you and like me, like living in a time of chaos, when people are doing right in their own eyes, just trying to figure out how in the world they're going to cope. It's a story about a fractured family. In between these epic stories of kings and judges and leaders of political influence. And And so you go from watching the evening news in Judges and the big national stories there, and watching the evening news in Samuel and Kings and the big national stories there, to actually, it's almost like you're reading a family journal. This story about Ruth. And I find that, like, the things that I get worked up about politics and Sacramento and Washington, Ukraine, the economy, laws, unhealthy cultural trends, and gross injustices, those things that would preoccupy a lot of my time, I realize there's not a whole lot that I can do about that. And then we come to Ruth, this precious little story captured in 4 chapters between these 2 power sets of books. And maybe I invite you this week to, like, maybe tone down the national news. I'm actually unplugging this week from all news media except for NBA basketball. And I'm going to allow God to speak to me even through these pages. I've only spoke one other time on the book of Ruth, and if you heard me when I do that, like, indulge me again. I'm actually taking a fresh approach to it this time. But the book of Ruth is really about, like, slowing down your pace and listening to the voice of God and finding Him profoundly there in the ordinariness of your lives. And it's my prayer that by the end of this week, through Danny's talks and what I have to say and the worship that Luke Brown and the band and sessions you go to and reflections you have and fun activities that you're involved in, that you leave here more spiritually alive and more relationally vibrant and more emotionally healthy and more tender towards Jesus amidst all the chaos that's going on. Because the book of Ruth is couched in the midst of chaos when everyone was doing right in their own eyes. And then we find this book. And I can promise you that as you listen to the words of this book, God's word speaking to you, you'll begin to be revitalized as you see the big picture of what God is actually doing. I remember when I was in college, I spent a chunk of a summer backpacking through Europe, and I was by myself this one particular day, and I was on a train from Newcastle, England to London, and it was the mid-'80s, and the train was crowded, and I remember I sat down on the only seat that I could find that was empty, and the man next to me was reading, a very dapper-looking British guy, was reading the London Times, and on there were the stories about the riots and killings and people protesting and fighting over more money in the minimum wage and the Iron Lady Margaret Thatcher, kind of reckoning with the labor movement. And so many people were saying they want more vacation time. They want to be paid a few pounds more. They want this and they want that. And she was fighting against that. And I was looking over his shoulder, just looking at the headlines of that paper. And then that man tucked that paper underneath his arm and he pointed out the window. The first words he said to me. And there, spanning the side of this hill, was this large horse carved in stone way off on the horizon. And he said to me these words I'll never forget. He said, "Isn't it a shame how we worry and fret over these petty matters when this horse has been carved in rock for 700 years, and 700 years from now that rock will still be there?" It was a perspective maker for me, and that's what Ruth is as well. God is at work in all these petty matters of our lives in ways that are going to show His glory in your life in ways that I believe will blow you away. And my encouragement this week is to begin to see that God is doing something bigger in your life than you can imagine. And that you can see it through the hard stuff. And this is what's happening in Ruth. Lots of details. Lots of really strange details, not Dr. Strange, but lots of strange details in this book. Lots of incidents, lots of fretful moments and sad days. But the big picture, as the book unfolds, begins to reveal that God is at work in Ruth and Naomi and this guy that we'll meet tomorrow named Boaz. And by the way, God's at work in your life too. He is so for you. I love what Philip Yancey says. He says, there's nothing that you can do to make God love you more. There's nothing that you can do to make God love you less. He loves you that much. And I chose Ruth for this week because it's been deep in my heart and mind to see what God is doing in the routine and ordinariness of my days, because there have been some really hard days. So let me give you a few characteristics about the book of Ruth, and then we're going to get into it a little bit more. First of all, we don't know who wrote it. It could have even been a woman who wrote it. It has this tender prose. It's about this ordinary family from Bethlehem. Bethlehem means the home or the house of bread. And it's this family from there, and I want you to remember that house of bread idea. And the book is called Ruth. It's the only book in the Old Testament that is named for this non-Jewish person, this immigrant, alien, this woman of absolutely no stature. It's a historical book. It tells the history of this family. We know it's historical because the very first verse and the very last verse actually give historical, factual context to it. So it is a story that actually happened. It's not a fable. It's a book that has the highest percentage of dialogue of any book in the Bible. There are more quotation marks per word in the book of Ruth than anywhere else. And interestingly enough, of all the characters that talk, Ruth actually has the least to say, and there's going to be more on that tomorrow. There are three main characters of Ruth. There's Naomi, and there's Boaz. We lost three of them today, Naomi's husband and her two sons. And we'll meet Boaz tomorrow evening. And there are very few references to God in this book, which is a very interesting fact. Not as few as Esther, because Esther has none, but there are very few. And we'll have a chance to talk about why that is so. So let's go. Here we go. Verse 3, Naomi's husband died, and she was left with her two sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah, the other named Ruth. And after they lived for 10 years, both sons died, and Naomi was left without her two sons and her husband. It's very journalist, very matter-of-fact language, nothing emotional about that, but that's a very tragic time, obviously, for Ruth. And if you look at how these first few verses unfold, the family's beginning to struggle. Famine, Bethlehem, the house of bread, has no more bread. They actually had to leave and go into Moab. Moab actually wasn't the best place. Back in Numbers 25, it said that the Israelite men went and seduced the women of Moab. It was a place known of kind of sexual exploits that over time that the Israelites were said to stay away from the Moabite women. It wasn't the healthiest place to go, but they managed there. And I don't know why they went. It doesn't say if Naomi told Abimelech, hey, honey, we got to go. Things are bad here. Or if he told her they were going to go. Something happened where they went, and they brought their sons. And then the husband dies. The sons marry foreigners. 10 years there, no grandkids come. One dies, another dies. It's like blow after blow and tragedy after tragedy. It's like a country song, right? I actually did. I was looking the other day. I was thinking, what is the saddest country song out there? And you can actually Google it. I found out it's a song by Merle Haggard. Anybody remember Merle Haggard, or at least the name? Not many hands out there. I don't really know who he is either. But he has a song called "If We Can Make It Through December." There he is, right there. He doesn't look like that now. Is he dead? He's dead. Oh, sorry to hear that. So, moment of silence. Okay. And it's about this guy. He gets laid off from the factory. It's December, and he can't buy his one and only daughter a Christmas gift. So, super sad song. I don't know if Luke Brown knows it because he's from Nashville, but maybe he does. I actually played it. I'm not going to play it for you, but I played it for our son Sam the other day, and I wanted him to tear up a little bit. And when the song was done, I said, "Sam, what'd you think?" He said, "Well, I don't know. I think Merle Haggard probably did pretty good financially with that song." So, doesn't have that emotional I have. If we make it through December, we'll be fine. I'm not going to sing it to you, but here you have Naomi, basically this aging woman. Things are going really, really bad for her. And she's having this terrible, terrible, miserable December, this tough season. And she's without provider. She's in this strange place, and there's a famine in the land. And as we see in the first verse, it's not just a famine in the land, but like the people are doing what they want in their own eyes. Like morally, it's a corrupt culture that she's in. Everything imaginable is going bad all around her. And then, she decides it's time to go back. Maybe, let me just figuratively, I don't know if any of you are having a famine in your land. Maybe not in all parts, but in some parts. Maybe your marriage is good, kids aren't doing that great. Maybe vice versa. Maybe your life is hurt by somebody, and you get this strained relationships. I don't know what your famine might be. Maybe spiritually you're in a funk. You come here at Mount Hermon and say, God, do something, because I'm just feeling like I'm walking through the valley, and it's not that great right now. Maybe it's COVID, maybe it's cultural changes, maybe it's politics, maybe it's money, maybe it's, whatever. Maybe you just want off the bus. I was at O'Hare Airport recently, and I was on this rental car shuttle. And I had this moment, I thought, I think I want to be a rental car shuttle driver. I don't want to trade jobs with this guy. I wanted on the bus, not off the bus. I wanted to drive that bus. There's something that I wanted to do something so different because it was that kind of season. So after 5 verses, those first 5 verses, again, flying through, she's in this terrible lot, and she decides it's time to initiate this change in her life. Then we get to verse 6, when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them. She and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. So her daughters-in-law are Ruth and Orpah. I actually heard that Oprah Winfrey's name, when she was born, it was Orpah, but people pronounced it wrong. They said Oprah, so she became Oprah, but she's really Orpah. Did you know that? Yes. You did? Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know Merle Haggard either, but anyway, so she tries to persuade them to go back. She's saying, listen, daughters-in-law, you're going to be better off, go back, start your own families. Don't wait for me. My life is already miserable. If I bring you back into Bethlehem, it's not going to be any better there for you. And you're not going to wait around for a husband, and you're going to go back to your own families and have husbands waiting there for you. She talked and convinced, and finally Orpah, who's interesting, her name means back of the head, turned and walked away, and that was the last thing that Naomi saw. Can't blame Orpah. She wanted to go back to where she was, but that it says that Ruth clung to Naomi. And those precious verses there where she says, this is Ruth in verse 16, don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates me from you. I remember my father, this small-framed Canadian preacher, he liked the King James Version. He was bilingual. And there's a little pause there. I didn't not really right away, but anyway, you get it, okay. But he would actually quote that. I can't quote it, but he would quote what the King James Version said there, where Ruth says, whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, Naomi, will I die, and there will I be buried. So Ruth stays with Naomi, clings to her, even though she knew that her prospects of a successful, flourishing life were going to be minimal, and it's just a grim picture ahead of her. And she clings, and she decides she's not going to return to the gods that she's familiar with. She left her parents, she left her community, she left her people, she left her language, she left her country, because she wanted to be with Naomi and to follow Naomi's God. This is a big sacrifice. It meant she'd probably go and live her life as a childless widow, to live in this foreign land among strangers, this alien. But what's most remarkable is she says here that your God will be my God. She says that to Naomi. I don't know why. Maybe she saw in Naomi's deep love for God, even though her situation was so bitter. Maybe she heard the stories of the Israelites, how God's love had provided for them and protected them. And I believe this was for Ruth her conversion moment, when she gave up the gods of her past, and the habits of her past, and the things that she was comfortable with. And she decided that she was going to give that all up and say, God, you're going to be my God, and I'm going to go where you want me to go. And maybe some of you need to reckon with that tonight. Taking that step to say, God, I'm willing to follow you in faith. That means making you the Lord of my life and giving up the small g gods of my life. Dethroning the lords of myself and my stuff. And Ruth committed and said she clung and never looked back, and it was hard. But we see each night, we're going to see the same thing, how right this was. And so they headed off to Bethlehem. It was like 7 to 9 days walking across that Jordan desert land and all of the passes. And it says the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. And hear me on this. There were two reasons why they went back. Naomi went back because it was a sensible thing to do, right? Her family was there. Her land was there. Her people was there. Her language was there. But Ruth went back because of her faith. It was a risky thing to do. And she was leaving everything that she had to enter something new. You know, Ruth set out not knowing where she was going. It reminds me of Hebrews 11, where it says, Abraham and Sarah set out not knowing where they were going. A few verses later, you see, but you knew that they were looking for this city which had a foundation, whose architect and builder is God. There were these profound uncertainties in Ruth's life when she committed to go to Bethlehem with Naomi. It wasn't the sensible thing to do, but it was the faith-filled thing to do. The uncertainties she had is like, will I ever get married? Will I ever have children? Will I ever be accepted? Will I get a job? Will I be abused there? Am I always going to be considered an alien? These profound uncertainties in her life. And I've got some pretty profound uncertainties in my life right now as well, and maybe you do also. And I think about that passage in Hebrews 11 where it says Abraham and Sarah, they set out not knowing where they were going. Read uncertainty. And in so many times in my life, and I suspect yours as well, when we face those times of profound uncertainty, and uncertainty means you don't know what's going to happen next, and you don't. That we grope and we grasp for certainty. We want to know what's going to happen next, and we can't. And in God's economy, there is a difference when we reach those moments of uncertainty between trying to figure it all out, what's going to happen, which is certainty, and what God calls confidence. And there's a world of difference between certainty and confidence. Certainty means I know what's going to happen next and I don't. And confidence comes from the Latin con with fides faith. It means I trust what's going to happen next. And you're going to always have a lot of uncertainties in your life. But the antidote to those uncertainties is not certainty, because you're never going to know what's going to happen next. The antidote is to live not grasping for certainty, but trusting in confidence, con with fides faith. That's why Paul can say in Philippians 1:6, be confident, be con with fides faith of this one thing, that he who began a good work in you is going to bring it to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. That's something you can count on in those profound uncertainties in your life, those uncertainties that Ruth faced. I remember when we decided to uproot from New England and head to Southern California from sea to shining sea, we were facing a lot of uncertainties. I felt like this is what we were supposed to do, but there were moments of panic in my life that, like, can I do this job of being president of Biola? Did I have what it takes? What happens if I fail? What happens if our kids, don't like it? What happens if it kind of warps them? What happens if it strains our marriage? What happens if we end up being Warriors fans and not Celtics fans? All these worst case scenarios that we were going through. And I remember sitting at home in South Hamilton, Massachusetts, and thinking about this journey that we were about to go on in 2007. And I said to Paula and our 3 kids and our dog, I said, let's go on a road trip. Let's drive to California. And let's experience this country from one side to the other as we're on this big journey to the unknown and uncertainties before us. And we had just given our minivan away to some missionaries. So we had a small sedan. And Paul's going really? We had this small sedan for you, me, Ella, Sam, Anders, and the dog. She said, you can take the kids. I'm going to fly. And you can take the dog. And then Ella said, well, if Mom's flying, I'm flying. So there's 2 out now. The dog was going to go with them, and then I looked at Sam, who was our youngest, 8 years old. He said, how long is it again? I said, I don't know, we'll do about 6 days across the country. He said, yeah, I'm flying too. So I said to Anders, Anders, you up for it driving with me? He's going, I don't know. And then I had this idea. He's a big baseball fan. So I said, we're going to go to ballparks, coast to coast, you and me. You get them. If we want to go to the top of the country, through like Cleveland, Chicago, and Seattle, and down, we can do that, the middle of the country, whatever you want. You buy the tickets, you put the itinerary together, and we'll go. And I said, but if we do that, we're going to, my part of the deal is we're only going to eat in local restaurants, like no fast food, no chains, no franchises. And he said, okay, but only chain hotels. So we had to negotiate all through that. And we set out, started in Boston, went down to New York, and Washington, D.C., saw the Nationals play, went to minor league in Charlotte. He had the tickets all set up. I gave him my credit card. I shouldn't have done that. Printed them in advance. And we'd go to a diner in New Jersey. I was so excited. I'd say to Betty, who was waiting on us, I said, Betty's my son Anders and me. We're going on a road trip, coast to coast. I got a new job in California on a father-son trip from Massachusetts to Los Angeles. And I said, that's so great. He'd roll his eyes. Go to the next place and eat in a restaurant down in Charlotte, say the same thing. We got to Atlanta. We're going to see what the Atlanta Braves play Cincinnati Reds. And we got there, and he pulled out the tickets. We didn't have them on a phone then. We printed them out, did it in advance. Went there, they scanned the tickets and made this funny beeping sound. The guy said, oh, that was last night's game. I'm thinking, oh, no. We got more games to go. We're a day behind. And so I went up to the guy at the counter. I gave him those tickets. I said, sir, it's my son Anders and me. We're on a cross-country road trip together, father-son, going to get a new job in California. Can you help me out a little bit? I'm in a bad situation. And he said, I don't think I can help you. Came back a few minutes later to give us tickets right behind home plate. Not right behind, up behind home plate. And Anders was like, why do we go to California? Let's stay in Atlanta. Everyone's so nice here. So I said, can't, because, I got a new job in California. We're going. Father-son trip. Drove through Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I told them about Bear Bryant, and we ate at the Bama Jamma Cafe there. Told the lady there, my son Andrew and me, eating biscuits and gravy, whatever that greasy stuff is in the South. Going to California, got a new job out there, the whole story, and went up in the stadium, kept driving, the next stop. We had a long stretch there from Atlanta, though, to get to the next game, which was in Albuquerque Isotopes, okay? So we're going through Wichita Falls, Texas, and ate some great barbecue there at a local place. Wichita Falls, it's kind of a godforsaken place. Well, it's not I know God's everywhere, so it's not godforsaken, but you know what I mean. There wasn't a whole lot there, and I was ready to get out of Wichita Falls, and took off, left the city, and I noticed that there was a police car pulling somebody over, and it was me. And he said, sir, you're going a little bit fast there. And I said, yeah, it's my son Anders and me. We're on a road trip. Got a new job in California, driving coast to coast. He said, you know what? It's a pretty precious story. He said, this time I'm going to let you off with a warning. Next time you go through Wichita Falls, don't drive so fast. And I said, I won't. And I haven't been through Wichita Falls since then. Kept driving through New Mexico, did the Albuquerque Isotopes, spent a night in Flagstaff, Arizona. And every time we went into a new state, our son Anders would take a picture of the sign. Welcome to Louisiana. Welcome to Texas. Welcome to New Mexico. welcome to Arizona. And then from Arizona, we're going to cross the Colorado River into California. I knew there was going to be one more sign. And we drove across that river. I said, Anders, pull out the camera. He pulled out the camera and rolled down the window, slowed down, took the picture of the sign, and said, welcome to California. It hadn't been about a mile, and I looked at Anders, and the tears were just streaming down his face. He said, Dad, turn around and take me back home. You've just uprooted me from everything that I love, our neighborhood, our church, my friends, our family, for this job that you have in California. I don't care about the cross-country road trip, father, son, moving to California anymore. And he was crying, I was crying, put the windshield wipers on. And, thankfully the Red Sox were in Anaheim that night. So I said, Anders, we got to keep going because we got to see the Red Sox tonight. He said, okay, Dad, keep driving. It's like selling a soul for a bowl of pottage or something. I don't know, yeah. So we kept going, but that trip for me has really become a bit of a metaphor of those journeys that we're on, those journeys into the uncertainties that are before us, and sometimes we're just scared to death. And those journeys may not be a move for you or a long pilgrimage for Ruth and Naomi, but you might be on a journey too. And you might think that the world in front of you is awfully frightening, and you have these profound uncertainties. And I'm telling you, pleading with you, don't just grasp for certainty in those moments, but live in confidence. Being confident of this one thing, that he who began a good work in you is going to bring it to completion until the day of Jesus Christ. And this is what we find happening in the story of Naomi, this widow who lost her 2 sons, whose other daughter-in-law turned around and she saw the back of her head as she walked back to her family. And all she had was Ruth. And it said that when she arrived back there, accompanied by her daughter-in-law, in the very final words of this chapter, it said, when they arrived in Bethlehem, the barley harvest was beginning. And Nate and Paul, get up here and start playing something spiritual. I'm going to land this plane right now, so we're all about done here. But I was just thinking of that. How does the chapter begin? It begins with there was famine in the land. And this terrible situation for Naomi, losing absolutely everything. She comes back in so many ways bitter. But as she arrives back in Bethlehem, the home of bread, the house of bread that it is, she sees that these barley sprouts are beginning to appear. The chapter closes with these signs of hope out of the suffering. I don't know if Naomi noticed it in all of her despair. I don't know if she knew that she knew that the famine was changing. I don't know if she knew that the barley sprouts were starting to bloom, and we'll see how tomorrow those became so much of their lifeline. I don't know if she knew what was going to happen with her daughter-in-law Ruth. She certainly couldn't have. But her daughter-in-law Ruth clung to her. And in her pain, there were these little signs of hope and little signs of mercy. And God's got them for you too. Found it interesting that Danny brought this up this morning, that maybe all of us are here in our very real uncertainties, needing a revitalization of our faith, a renewal of our hearts, for God to stir in us, to break that hardened, dry, cracked soil, and pour his water upon us, that water of life that he has. Praying that whatever your drought is, wherever your famines are, whatever your uncertainties may be, this week you begin to see some of those barley sprouts beginning to break through that cracked soil of your life. You're getting the New Testament in the morning, the Old Testament in the evening, with the same message, that God so wants you to flourish. Danny and I never met before this morning. We weren't comparing notes. It's interesting that he's talking about the vine, and I'm talking about the barley sprouts. these agricultural images in God's Word that are images of life and hope and even new beginnings that God has for you. You might be singing with Merle Haggard, "If We Make It Through December, We'll Be Fine." You might be in one of those December moments. Maybe it's the famine, or maybe it's the drought, or maybe it's the winter. Think of what C.S. Lewis writes. During the winter of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, at the sound of Aslan's roar, sorrows will be no more. And when he bares his teeth, winter meets its death. And when he shakes his mane, we shall have spring again. This is the story of what God is doing. Naomi had no idea how much those barley sprouts would mean to her family. Come tomorrow when you hear, like win or lose warriors, we got something to say tomorrow, because Bethlehem, this city of bread, is beginning to change the life of Naomi from the hardened place that she is. Naomi never walks away from God, but she needs to see that God is at work in this desperation of her life and that it's going to be okay. Verse 21, she says, "The Lord has brought me back empty." No, he hasn't. He's got something for you. As empty as you feel, he's got something for you. She didn't see the barley sprouts. And she didn't realize that though she left with her 2 sons and her husband and came back with this poor young woman from Moab, that God was going to do something exceedingly abundantly that she could ask or imagine. Sometimes we're so weary with darkness that we can't see God's small gifts of grace. Those barley sprouts. But look for them because they're there. So we'll see you tomorrow night as this story continues and as you find hope in the famines of your life. And now may the God of all grace, who called you in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, may he restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. And I pray this over my brothers and sisters in whatever uncertainty they face. Lord, heal and renew and restore. In Jesus' name.